Good evening and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. We'd like to start by thanking Enduro for their ongoing support in bringing you our live weekly Q&A. Tonight we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Murray Wilkinson from Yarram Stock Dogs and Performance Horses.
Murray will be picking who he thinks has asked the best question of the night, and they'll win a bag of Enduro high-energy food for working dogs with Real Kangaroo, mate. G'day, Mars. How you going, mate?
Good, guys. How are you going?
Pretty good, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Let's go.
Nice and cool there,
mate. Yeah, mate. It's pretty fresh out here. It's I don't know. We're probably down to the zeros now, but we've had a top of 8 degrees today, so it's been a pretty warm one all day.
And I'd like to, in advance, thank you for the commitment you've shown tonight. Got a couple of young ones inside, so you're actually out on the porch having a chat next to us, next to the gas heater.
Yeah, no. The little ones are a little bit terrorising inside, so they would probably commandeer the whole show. And, so we're sitting outside here and braving the elements.
Actually, should probably thank the real boss there, Jackie, as well, who's gone shopping and bought you that heater so that you could have a chat to us with a bit of warmth.
Yeah, no, definitely. We've got a nice little new gas heater sitting beside me, and it's come from Mudgee today. So thanks for that one.
Yeah, that's dedication for you, for sure.
It is. Murray, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, mate?
I suppose where do I start? I grew up around sort of Inverell area, around a town called Delungra, which not many people would know. They run a bit of a yard dog trial there now. My dad sort of managing places there. Then we moved out to Garra onto a sheep and cattle and cropping place out there. Went away to boarding school. During that time, I used to go down to a mate's place in the Hunter. And that's sort of where I first really seen like good working dogs, I suppose. And I used to go to a fella's place called Mark Ray, and his father Donnie Ray had pretty good dogs, and I was amazed to see what they used to be able to do, especially up in the hills, and how much I liked it down there. So once I obviously graduated school, I thought I could go wherever I want, so I moved down to the Hunter and spent a lot of time down there in the Hunter Valley. I just finished doing a 14-year stint at Elliston, and I've moved out here to Cooler, out to a bit flatter country, now to Tungi Station out here. Back out to at Elliston there, we had sort of 14,000 head of cattle and 3,000 sheep and a couple thousand goats, and out here of sort of role reversal, they've got about 16,000 sheep and 2,600 head of cattle, so it's been a good change.
Wow, that's a big.
Sorry, Laura?
I was just saying that's a pretty big change, but Elliston, like a lot of people know what Elliston is, but for those that don't, do you want to sort of explain that and how big that is?
Yeah, so Elliston, obviously, it's a big property owned by the Packer family, and it's 85,000 acres up there in the hills, runs right up onto the Barrington tops. Everything there was done on horses, so no free rides for the dogs, obviously. Some big days in some pretty thick and wild sort of country, getting stock together. So it was great to actually see and what you could get achieved with your animals there for the period of time that I was there. It was a great learning curve, that's for sure. It was a big eye opener when I went there from what I'd started with and what I had to develop to get my job done.
Absolutely. As renowned for like a lot of wild dogs throughout those Barrington tops as well, they ever throw your dogs off while you're working?
No, the dogs we had on the Barringtons weren't overly severe. Like they didn't come and attack our dogs or anything like while we're working. Down around Singleton, down that area, if you're out working, like their dogs can come and take to your dogs while you're working. But the only issue we probably ran into is how the cows used to fight, like our working dogs. So obviously we had to have a lot stronger dog than probably what you would normally need to work a cow, just because of how much resistance you had getting them out of that country and whatnot. So yeah.
Because seeing a dog wouldn't be something that they haven't seen before, right? But normally the dog that wants to drag them to the ground.
Yeah, look, obviously them wild dogs would come in and they sort of come in, I suppose, at all angles at them and trying to get that calf off them or something like that. So, the cows, instead of just coming out straight to fight your dog, they'd come out and then they could turn back and get one, that might be standing on the side or whatnot. They weren't just a straight runner. They put the head down, come out with their front legs. They kind of knew how to use their body a bit to cause some injury if they wanted to. And if you had them dogs that wanted to back off and run away, you pretty well dragged yourself a battle for the whole day. So it made the task a lot more difficult, that's for sure.
And you mentioned earlier, like you moved. Oh, sorry, go, Laura.
It's all right, you go.
I'll say you mentioned that you moved on now, and a bit of a big change. Is a big change been mostly for yourself or your dogs, or a combination between yourself, like as a team?
Oh, a bit of a combination, I suppose. I've gone from doing a stockman role there at Elliston for all that time, and now I'm an assistant manager out here at Cooler. And obviously the changing from sheep to cattle is a big change for the dogs, but I haven't actually really changed my team as such. It's just been good to see them actually have to develop new skills and have to work out, a bit more distance on their stock and see how much actual brain the dogs have got to sort themselves out to be able to handle the different tasks that's been thrown at them now.
Yeah. Question here from Danny Kerr. Has the style of dog changed from when you first started?
Possibly not. The type of dog that I've always liked as such, and I suppose I've got a liner dog now that I sort of follow along, and prior to that, it was just where when I first started out, it was wherever I could get a dog, just to get the job done, and until I actually realised that you actually had to train dogs and how much a dog that is trained can help you out. I had a bunch of dogs and it wasn't until I actually had my good one get injured and I realised that I had actually pretty average dogs. So I actually went and sought some help off some people and got a bit of direction in the way that I should go with them, and then started to put a bit of a line together, I suppose. So I suppose it has changed. Instead of just having bits of everything, to try and look for a consistent line to, as far as your genetics and that sort of thing, to get the job done the easiest possible way.
And you have a bit of a mixed lolly bag there, mate, or predominantly down the collie path?
Yeah, pretty well all collies. I've got one Kelpie and I've got 3 Hunaways here now. So since I've pulled this job on, I had one Hunaway at Elliston there and he passed away, but I've picked up a couple others since I've come here, and just prior to coming here, I suppose. So that's sort of a bit of a path I'm going down now as well. So, but yeah, I predominantly like the collies.
And what is it about your collies, mate?
They just got better manners.
Yeah.
Easier to have around. I've tried quite a lot of Kelpies. And the one I've got now he's a nice dog. But he's still got his habits. You go to feed him overnight and he's got a whimper and whine, and it's just got to test little things. Yeah.
And
No, that's fair enough. But why the Hunaways?
yeah, that's
The Hunter just and I suppose until you actually start to use them, you don't realise how handy a tool they can be. The power that they've got just in their noise. You position them certain spots around stock or even just up on a ridge. The amount of stock that they can move just with their noise is phenomenal. Even in the yards, using them in the yards, you've only got to, and they've obviously got to be under control a bit. So you've got to be able to open them up and shut them down. But the stock just pretty well can't wait to get away from them. So that's just why they've become so handy out here. My dogs predominantly don't make a sound, so it's hard for a big mob of sheep to know that there's a dog standing there, I suppose, compared to when we're up in the bush, and I don't really want my dogs to be making any noise when I'm working cows and calves and they're fighting a cow, just because they create so much more confrontation. On the sheep, obviously, I need something to move, so I'm using the noise of them Hunaways to get that done.
yeah, beautiful. And
No, that's
last week, obviously, we had Rob Hodgman on, who knows his way around a pony fairly well. But you know the front from the back pretty well yourself, right?
Yeah, I've rode a horse or two. That's
yeah.
for sure. It's I've sort of, I suppose I've started off just doing a bit of camp drafting, and then I wound up with the stallion that we've got now, a Mega Cat, and tried him to have a go at the snaff a bit for charity cutting, and then wound up just missing the final there by half a point for my first go at a horse that I've really trained properly. And then from there, I've gone on and just picked up some horses with some good genetics. A bit like, I suppose, with the dogs, how much it can help you there, how much easier it makes your task of getting them trained some more for that cutting deal, and sort of went along that, using that as my foundation, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then turned them into some camp drafters and challenge horses, and now doing the rein cow horse deal. So just been pretty lucky to have success in all them disciplines, I suppose. So
No, that's good on you, mate. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And how do you find the crossover within your own training or within yourself? Like, do you find that working with like a prey animal just helps you calm down a bit when you're working around a dog that kind of, or when you're with your kelpies, want to be pushing you a bit?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose the using the horses and the dogs, I suppose the horse working with them, was a lot more calmer and that sort of thing. I don't know. I suppose they would just work hand in hand, I suppose. It's hard to say there whether it makes you feel any different or not. But it's just that both animals just go hand in hand.
Yeah, awesome. Back with us, Laura. Got you now.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All good.
Do you take your training from your horses and mold it with your dogs? Like, do you, let's say before a trial, do you train? I lost my words, but are your principles, the way you attack, like what you're struggling with, the same, or do you approach it differently?
No, not really. Everything in life, I suppose, is just consistency. It's no different with your horses or your dogs, your kids or anything. You're willing to accept, everything's about what you're willing to accept. So I suppose with your horses, you're wanting them to be as crisp and sharp and everything as possible. Same with your dogs, but don't expect them to be able to do that without doing your prior training. Like, you're not going to want to go and step into a cutting pen on a horse with one that you haven't actually done it on before, and then expect to trot a cow out of the herd and go throw your hand down, start cutting, or same as if you're camp drafting, go outside and go galloping, chasing a chasing a cow 100 mile an hour. If you haven't done that at home, don't go and try and do it at the event. And same as with a dog, like don't expect him to be pulling his lefts and rights or whatever he needs to do if he hasn't done that at home. Or don't go and step out in front of everyone and then get the poos with the dog because he's not actually. You think he's not listening, but it's not that he's not listening. He just doesn't know.
Yeah.
I suppose that probably leads into another question that Danny Kerr's asked. Is like, for people that don't know, you have one of the biggest audiences, I suppose, in the country at the Sydney Easter Show. And Danny's asked, has working within the Easter Show or Sydney Show, has that got you, and working with donated cattle and events like the Classic and whatnot, has it made you more aware of the way you handle cattle and dogs in a different way on a bigger stage?
Definitely. When you're on that sort of a stage, you have to be aware of animal welfare at all times, and so you've just got to keep a little bit of wits about you, but you can't go rousing on your animal in front of everyone. And things always don't go to plan when you're working with, animals. Things don't always go to plan. So you've got to be able to kind of roll with the punches a bit and be able to adapt yourself and put yourself in positions to make things look like that was actually supposed to happen. Yeah, that happens quite often. And but yeah, like just I suppose little things like you got to make sure when I'm doing, say, the yard dog demos and whatnot, you got to make sure your dog's not biting the sheep, and just little things like you'll work out your dog won't pull up in a certain spot. They'll want to go to somewhere different. So you'll just let them roll around to there and then stop them and then call them back to where you actually wanted them. And so it actually looks like you made that happen, but you actually didn't make that happen. The dog was just wanting to do. Sometimes it's not always peaches and cream when you're out there, but you got to make it look. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And back a step from that, how did you become involved with that?
So to be involved with that, I used to ride some horses for Warwick Lawrence and Fiona Lawrence, and Warwick came up to home when I was at Elliston there, and I was out riding one of his horses and just bringing some cattle up to my arena with some dogs just to work my cutting horses and that sort of thing. And while he was there, so the dogs were just down the paddock. I don't know what, I had a couple of dogs there. And so I just rode off and left the dogs and then went up and started talking to Warwick, and the dogs kind of knew the role. They brought the cattle up, put them in the arena and stopped at the gate there. And Warwick was like, oh, shit, that was pretty good. And then when we're at the Landmark Classic, he come up and he said, oh, do you want a job? And I said, oh, not really. I'm pretty happy where I am. I think this was about 8 years ago now. I said, I'm pretty happy. And he's like, no, at Easter down at the Sydney Royal. I said, oh, yeah, no drama. I'll, let me know what we got to do. So we went down and had a bit of a look at it and went down to do the Man from Snow River show. So I took some dogs down to do that job. And while I was doing that show, things were probably a little bit hectic when we were doing our display in that show. So I just said to him, I just took 3 dogs out and I said, oh, look, if I sit one dog at the front of the mob of cattle, one dog at the tail of the mob of cattle, and I'll use the other dog so we had to split the cattle in different colours. They said it was 2 colours of cattle, and I used the other dog to hold the other mob of cattle, away wherever you cut them out and take them to. And they said, "Oh, do you think you could do that?" And I said, "Oh, I'll give it a go." So I did that, and after 3 nights, the old dog that I had there, old white dog called Boo, she worked out that after the people had finished chasing the certain colour cow, and they always chased the certain colour that you had to cut out, that she'd go and pick the cow up off them and go and hold it in a certain spot in the arena. And everyone just got mesmerised by this white dog picking the cow up off the person chasing it, going sitting aside and holding it by itself and whatnot. So, and then Linnell Smith, who's the head of entertainment at Sydney, came up to Elliston to do a bit of a photo shoot for a lead-in thing for the Snow River deal. And she just said, "Oh, do you mind? Do you think you could do a dog trial at the Sydney show?" And I said, "Oh, maybe." And I said I could organise possibly, some good handlers or whatever. And she said, "No, you do a show." So I went to do the show for her, and like it was lunchtime entertainment. They've walked out with a microphone, and I was a pretty shy sort of person. I'm a lot better now. But they've walked out with a microphone. I said, "What do you want me to do with that?" And they're like, "You've got to talk." I'm like, I thought, geez, I
Is
thought I
this
was
in
just...
the main arena at lunchtime?
Yeah, it was like 2 minutes before I went out. They got to talk, and I was like trembling. So, crikey, the stadium was packed there. And so anyhow, went out and done that show, and I done a lot of ums and ahs and trying to work the dogs and all that sort of deal, and then just got more and more comfortable doing that, and that's what led into that. And then the yard dog thing that I do there, that came from doing a sunrise thing one morning, and I knew they had some sheep up there at Little Hands and Land thing that they have at the show. And then, we couldn't obviously work the cattle on the main arena that early in the morning. I said, "Oh, there's some sheep up there." So we went up there and worked them. And I just got the dog that I had at the time, Mambo, and he just jumped up, and I sent him up out in the open over the backs of these sheep and whatnot. And they were like, "Geez, well, maybe you could do a yard dog show too." So that kind of led into all that, yeah.
And how many years have you been doing that for now?
I think I've done 6 years of that. I had a break when COVID was on. I didn't do COVID. And then the following year, I think they only did like 40 or 50% of the entertainment. So I was obviously in the cut-off section of that. So I didn't do that year as well. But, yeah, other than that, it's been pretty consistent.
That's pretty cool, mate. And what are some of your takeaways from working your dogs in front of such large audience?
I suppose you get to see where the holes are in them, definitely, because they try and take advantage of the situation. Just because you can't actually chastise them. It's like being at a 2-week-long dog trial. You go to a dog trial and some of them dogs think they can take over a little bit. Well, they can kind of do that at the show, but it's just a bit bigger audience. And, so, but you also, I suppose, a lot of people you meet and that sort of thing. Like, it's amazing to probably hear a lot of people's stories. Everyone, I do a meet and greet after every show, and the people come up and they want to chat, and they're so fascinated by what you can do with the dogs, and it's just general day-to-day stuff that, I don't actually put on a show that's an entertainment as such show. I just do a factual type show of what we would do out on the farm, why we'd use the dogs, how handy they are for us to use in the actual rural industry. It's not an actual entertainment deal. Like, there's no there's no bells and whistles to it. It's just it's pretty black and white, but people seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I sat there and watched it, in all honesty. And I have to admit, it's really cool how many people sit there and be like, oh, wow, I didn't know that they use dogs for that and this and that. And I think a lot of people would come away with it with a different understanding of the purpose of a dog at work.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I suppose I do the demo there too with using a Kelpie and a Collie, and just talk about little differences between the two sort of dogs, and that's actually why I've actually got the Kelpie.
Yeah,
I got him to do Sydney, but he turned out to be a handy little dog. I talk about the difference between the two dogs, your different work styles, and obviously the way you would go about different approaches of training them and that sort of thing. Just talk about.
There'd be lots of people there, like obviously from Sydney, that wouldn't know the front of a cow from the back of the cow, or front of a sheep from the back of the sheep. But how many heartstrings do you pull where some people will pull at your meet and greet afterwards and go, my grandfather used to work on a property and...
Oh, mate, it's amazing to hear how many people have, just had some little thing to do with a place, and surprising, like, how many people live near where you've been, or know actually whether you know a certain person and you actually know them. It's such a small world, So, and then you do get some people that just come back and watch show after show after show every day. So, yeah.
How do your dogs handle the atmosphere of it all?
They actually quite like it. I've only got one that doesn't like it down there. And she used to be fine, but she got drilled by a pony there one night in the stables. As I was going out to do a show, she doesn't like it much down there now. So, but the other dogs, they're quite fine. And it only takes them probably 1 or 2 days for a new dog. Once you've been down there, like, I don't put anything on leads. I just walk through the crowd with the dogs, off the lead, and they just follow me through the crowd. And doesn't matter how tight a amount of people they've got to go through, they'll just keep following. And I think that kind of mesmerizes people too, that you can actually go for a walk with your dogs, and they're not walking out in front of you, they're just walking behind you and going past all the food stalls and everything like that. And people stop and try and pat them and that sort of deal. And the dogs will cop the pat, and then they will just, take off to try and catch up and keep up with me, It's the same as after them shows. I sit them dogs up on the drums, and, they could probably have 1,000 photos or more by the end of the show, because people line up and they all pat them and everything like that. And I just stand out in front of the people, because the dogs actually aren't paying any attention to the people patting them. They just stand there staring at me. So I just stand out in the middle, and the dogs face forward, so everyone gets a perfect photo.
Is there a crowd favourite, mate?
I used the crowd favourite used to probably be Mambo when I had him down there, just because he was a cheeky bugger. I'd be doing a show, and he was so twitchy and wanted to get going. Like, you could see him trembling, wanting to work, and all the little kids would think it was hilarious. And then he'd bounce off, say, the stage or the drum that I'd have him on, but he'd be back on before I could turn. And they all thought it was a bit of a party trick. The kids would be like, he's off the drum. But he was back on. Yeah.
Entertainment in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Actually, do you want to tell us a bit about your current team? Who have you got there at the moment?
My current team is probably the majority of them go back to a dog that I had called Zach, and he's probably starting to feature in a lot of people's dogs now. But everything's either by him, out of a bitch by him, by a dog by him, or out of a bitch by a dog by him. And was a beautiful big dog, and he was very strong on cattle, but on sheep he was wide working, and he'd lower himself down, and he was a pretty neat dog to work sheep as well with. And so that's kind of what my main team is at the moment. And then I've still got a couple of Shady Acres dogs as well. And I've got a Crawford's dog here. It's out of Peg by Glenn, the dog Alan Munn's had, and I've got a couple of pups by him that are not too bad, and then I've got a little bitch here that's by Mambo, and out of Zach bitch that I had as well. So she's probably my main bitch that I use for most things. But then obviously we've got Colt, my Kelpie. So he's cracking Colt. I got him off Big Benny Costa. And when he was a pup, he was sort of big lump of a pup. And so that's my Kelpie. And then a couple of Hunaways that I've got. I've got a young bitch here that I got off Clint Pickering. And I've got a sort of Blackie Brindle looking Hunaway dog that Kerry Kilmeister in New Zealand bred. And then I've got another black and tan dog that come from Justin Booth over in New Zealand. So he's probably the main one of them that I use. He's a pretty useful dog.
Got a big array, a lot of variety in your team there. And those outside collies that you mentioned, are your own line, are they bred similar or based similar to those collies you have, or different line again?
No, I've got Lex here to kind of breed over my Zach line of females, and I remember seeing his mother years and years ago. It was the very first USD, and I really liked her. She was a ripping good dog, and sort of always wanted something out of her, and unfortunately, obviously she passed away, and was just fortunate enough to get that dog, and he's got some really good attributes to him. He's a great casting dog and whatnot, and has nice feel on his stock. It's probably not as strong as what my other line of dogs are, but he's probably got a bit more brains there, I suppose. And the Shady Acres line, I started that. I started getting that. I swapped Robert a dog, and he turned out to be probably the best dog I reckon I've ever owned, and I don't know whether I'll get anything as good as him again. He was a ripper, and sort of kept going along that line, like he was out of Paddy by Joker, which is the same as what Jimmy and Tanya and all that good line of dog is. And then I also had a female called Lola. She was out of Livy, which was out of Paddy, and also by Joker. Won the New South Wales champs there at Carcoar last year with her, and the following weekend she passed away. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyhow, that's just how it happens out on the farm, eh?
Is that why you keep a bit of depth in your team as well?
Yeah, look, obviously, you obviously, well, probably not so much where I am now, working a lot more sheep, but there should be a lot more longevity in the dogs. But they do succumb to a lot of injuries when you're working so many cattle in such rough country where I was, and that work was probably grueling enough on them dogs, from early in the morning to when you finished of a night, they were on their feet like there was no breaks for them all day. So, you kind of wore them out pretty quick.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier in the night that you were working with dogs and then you had to go away and speak to people about how to work a dog properly. Were there some mentors in your early stages of coming through that really did help you kick along?
I suppose with the working dogs, the first time I seen dogs worked, which looked like they worked properly, was Mark Ray, down at Timor, which is Donny Ray's son, and he had like 5 dogs who were out mustering, and I couldn't believe what these 5 dogs were doing. A lot of them were the Crows line of dogs, them Kelpie dogs, and they were great to see. And then I went down to Old Donny's, and he had some McCallum dogs down there, and I wound up getting a bitch off him, which started off my line of dogs probably. And she was pretty good, and it was amazing to see what they could do. And then sort of went away from that, and then when I worked on a place at Bingra, and I went down, I met a fella called Justin Dickens, and got a dog off him called Nadu Sarge, and that was the first time I actually seen an actually proper broken in dog. And he had 13 dogs, I think, and they were unreal to watch these dogs. And then so I went down. I think I went there, like, watched him like 4 or 5 times before I actually bought him, because I thought $1,200 was a lot of money to pay for a dog.
Yeah.
And then anyhow, he told me to come along to Greg Prince and do Greg Prince school. So I went and did that, and then it was great, the knowledge that I learned from that. And then obviously still kept talking there with different things on how to train them. And then went on to probably Tony McCallum. He helped me just with a lot of, not so much the refinement of things, but just how, it comes into play how you actually work your stock as well. It's not actually just being able to control your dog. It's being able to position yourself and how you actually act yourself when you're doing the dog trial, or working dog out in the open. It's not just who can handle their dog the best. It's who can actually work their stock the best. It's a team effort. So he kind of helped me realize that as such, I suppose. And then obviously as far as the training goes, I've watched countless hours of videos and read books, talked to people. It doesn't matter if no, it's a silly question. Only silly question is the one that you don't ask. So, talk to that many people, and if you pick up one thing off someone, and you can go home and try it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't suit your deal, you don't have to do it. So, you'll build your own system.
Absolutely, but even if it doesn't work, it's still another tool in your toolbox that you can go and pick up one day if you need to as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it mightn't fit. It mightn't fit what you're doing at the time, but then come later on, there's there's going to be something you'll think, oh, geez, I might just try that, and all of a sudden it works, and you're like, that was just the time that it was waiting to be used. Like, just a bit of knowledge you should retain.
Absolutely. And with such a big team, or when I say big team, an array of different dogs in your team, what's Murray's go-to style? What's the dog that you go that you aim for? What kind of style of dog?
I suppose I like a calm dog. I like a big, good-looking dog, and plenty of strength as such. Like I like a dog that if it gets put under a lot of pressure, it doesn't weaken. Just easy to have around. Don't like bad manners. Some dogs are just rude, and so there's no point having them about, especially if you got a family and what. So, and we like things pretty quiet around here, so we don't like bad manners in the camp. But yeah, just just a good style of dog, and something that's willing to work, like no matter what the situation. And can feel their way out on stock. Like they don't have to be the biggest, widest Carson dog or the roughest dog or anything like that. They're just, as long as they've got their style of work, it doesn't change, and they can handle most mobs.
Yep. And I'm guessing talking about handling stock and mobs there, the terrain's a lot different now, where you are now a lot flatter and you can see for a lot longer.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I first sent the dogs out here, they were thinking, when are they supposed to pull up? You could just see for miles. Whereas you kind of had to give them a bit of guidance and recast and whatnot up in the bush if you could see the dogs up in there. Also, I suppose when I was in the hills, I probably had to teach the dogs to go off a bit of scent or just trust me that they'll stop there if I was sending them, that they were going to find something. And kind of just had to probably put that into the dogs over time, just from when I start working them. You go out mustering, and to teach them dogs, like you see people talk about teaching a dog to do a blind cast, and dogs don't just naturally know how to do that. That's something you've got to teach them to do, and you've got to do that by increasing distances that you teach them dogs to go. So you got to know when stock have left from somewhere, and they might only be 50 or 100 meters away. So you go to that spot and you'll teach them to run off from there, and they'll pick up the stock. Working stock is their reward for doing the job right, and you'll just increase that more and more. And by the time that dog's broken in and done quite a lot of work, you can just actually go to a spot and you might just go, whatever your command is for them to go. And that all starts from when they're a little puppy, and them sheep are only 3 or 4 meters away in the training pen. It's just that same command. It's just that if I give that command, you can go and get some stock, and that's your fun. So, I don't probably have to do that so much here. I'll probably have to teach them a lot more steering and that, so that I can actually just kick them out on this flat country to pick up different stock. There might be 1 or 2, further away, but obviously we've put a breakout command and everything like that in the hills, but it'll probably just be a bit more steering out here now, just a little bit different. Right?
And how did you go about teaching that breakout command?
What I pull them up, and no different than when I'm starting them as a little pup. Say they might miss, say they go around their stock, and not every dog always picks up every animal. If you can pull them up and just say put a command on, say for look, and as soon as their eyes point in the direction of that stock, you send them again. They know that's where they're going to run. So, and it's no different to putting that blind cast on. So if once you've sent them out and they've picked up that stock, if you tell them to look, and once they're looking in a certain direction, you let them go. They know to run that direction that they're actually looking, and they'll pick up more stock. And so they'll just keep running further and further. And then obviously you can just put a whistle on that, put a command on that to, so that it's a lot easier to steer them about, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there a bit earlier, like you like a stronger pup or a stronger dog. How do you identify strength in a pup yourself?
I suppose it's hard. It's hard to identify them as a little pup. You can. I reckon you can identify them when you take them to stock. Pretty well. You now actually don't even need to put the pup on the ground to know whether it's going to be strong or weak. If a dog's got no strength, I reckon, with them trainer sheep, they'll want to come towards you and decrease that distance between you and the pup. If the pup's going to have a little bit of strength, you'll see them, they'll stop, stand there and stare at you. Might have a sheep stomp its foot or something like that. And if the pup's going to be like really strong or rough, them sheep, they want to get as far away as possible, and head to the further corner of the pen, like before you even put them on the ground. That's when I'll kind of work them out pretty well. And you'll see when you start your pup. I'm a big believer in what you start with, what you end up with. So how they start out in that first couple of minutes of their work, when they're tired at the end of the day, and things are not going to plan, whether they're a dog, so when you start them, and sheep looks at them, they want to run away or throw the tail up and start barking, or not want to actually get the task done. When they're getting tired, that's what they'll revert back to. It doesn't matter. You can put as much training on them, lefts and rights, forwards, backwards, whatever, as much as you ever want. When things are under the pump, that's what they'll revert back to, is what they naturally have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And do you, obviously you breed your own pups, do you try and run a litter on, or do you pick a pup out of litter?
No, I just pick them. Nowadays I actually don't get to pick them. The kids pick them, but there's always one that'll take your eye, take your fancy. You do obviously a few little tests. I'll pick them up, lay them down, squeeze a bit of web between their toes. Like, everyone's got their little thing. Like, it might be 3 whiskers in or a dot on the roof of its mouth or something like that. But I only just do them few things to see, as far as with putting a pup down, to see how it tolerates restraint, whether it will fight you and then relax, so obviously it's going to have a bit of resistance in its training, but it's obviously going to take your commands in the end. The squeezing of the toes, and that's just to see what its pain tolerance is like. If I went to squeeze its foot and it started yelping like hell, obviously if that dog gets jumped on by a cow, it's gonna go to water.
Yeah.
And yes, I want them to have a bit of pain tolerance there. Yeah, that's about all I go with to pick them. Yeah, I either like it or.
Yeah. And while we're talking about breeding, there's a question here from Dan Scott. Line breeding, how close is too close in your opinion? And do you DNA test anything?
No, I don't DNA test anything. Pretty well, I don't think there's such thing as too close. I think if you want consistency in your dogs, I think you need to line breed as much as you possibly can, because people, go looking for a dog that's going to put this into their dog or put that into their dog. Well, obviously your dog's not good enough, so don't keep breeding from your dog. Go and try a different line, and just by putting, if you've got something that's working for you, why look outside the square as such. Just you might have something there just for an outcross every now and then if you're getting worried about it, but I just keep breeding back in just to try and get that consistency in the dogs. What was the other part of that question?
No, you answered it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the bit that rang for me there was when you mentioned, like, if something's not good enough, why breed for it? Like, go and get a dog from somewhere else. And I think it was Peter Barr that touched on it the other day. He said, like, he looks at it when he's breeding from a bitch, looks at it as a dog. He goes, if you wouldn't use it as a sire, why would you breed from it?
Yeah, exactly. I actually I mainly keep dogs, just because I think if a bitch is going to be bred out of it, probably should be something special, and should be one of your best work dogs, as such, and not just kept just to breed out of, just because it's by this and out of this, and it should be able to breed you, certain things because of the way it's genetically bred. But if it can't do it itself, there's no point. There's no point going with that.
Yeah.
I think I've only got about 4 bitches myself.
And do you believe that the bitch plays a high percentage over the litter?
Not really. I think a good bitch is a good bitch. She can breed. She can breed. To most things. A good sire is a good sire. Try and link the both together, and then keep breeding back to that same deal. Try and get that consistency. Like if you've got a bitch that is a strong producer, and someone that's got a dog that's a strong producer, well, that's a kind of line, and they both work the same way that you like, then yeah, breed along that ways.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. Everything's got to play a part. It can't be just a good bitch and just a dog just to get a pup. Everything's got to play its part. Like some dogs just won't sire anything decent. Some bitches won't produce anything decent, no matter how good they are. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And do you have a particular age that you like to start your pups, or like to see them doing something by?
I start them about 6 or 8 weeks old. And I've kind of got a cut-off period between that 4 and 6 month period. If they're not working, then they just get rehomed.
Yeah.
That's what I always go by. Tony McCallum, he says if the bigger the fire in the belly, the sooner you feel the heat. So, I wanna know if I've got the pup here and I'm feeding it for a reason.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
You're right, go, Laura.
Question here from Rick Freeman. He's asked, what's the oldest age dog you've trained successfully from scratch, or that you have seen trained well from a much older age?
I suppose Lola, that bitch that I won the New South Champs with. She was about 5 when I got her. I got her just because she was out of control, and obviously she was pretty broke. By the end, I used to use her for all my demos down at Sydney, and anywhere else I used to go. Obviously, she won what she won, and I actually did one this year that belonged to our butcher that was at Elliston, and I trained her in 3 weeks and took her to Sydney show, did demos with her.
Let's go.
Yeah. So she was 5-year-old as well, and I've still got her here now, but yeah, she's a ripper.
So a bitch like that, that's like she's come through, she's older, then you've obviously put time and effort in. Is that a bitch you'd breed from?
I probably would. Just because she's got such nice work and the way she handles her stock. But in saying that, I would breed her back. To say that Lex that I've got, because they've got pretty similar genetics. So that I'm not spreading that genetics out. They both work very similar. So that's the way I would go with her, to breed her. So I know. As far as that training a dog that's old and whatnot, Zach, we got old. Zach is an older dog. He's a bit, I suppose, mortified when we got him, but his name used to be Blue, and like Greg Prince used to say, you can change a dog's name, its sides, everything in 2 weeks with consistent training. So I changed his name and his sides and everything, and you could say Blue as many times as you want to. You're blue in the face, and he wouldn't listen to it.
Have you ever had to change any of your commands, like for the sake of not just bringing a new dog in, but just for the sake of the way your dogs were responding to a particular request or command you had?
No, I've got a lot of different commands anyhow. So my females, they're on right and left. My males are over away. Kelpie's running back. The Hunaways, they're all on different commands, but they're mainly whistles. Lex he's round and over.
Do you have to look in a playbook before you work every dog? Get your NFL playbook out and go, what's the commands for this one?
Not joking. When I first started working dogs, and when I got that Sarge, Justin actually drew me a diagram on a bit of paper, which had a stick figure, arrows for left and right, and then a heap of circles drawn for the stock, and a circle drawn behind me for the dog. And I draw the same diagram for people that buy a dog off me now. And I used to carry that in my pocket, and I'd stop him, and I'd sit there and I'd fold it out, and I'd look at him and go, away, and the dog would go. And I used that until that piece of paper nearly fell in pieces.
Why different sides for bitches and dogs?
Just so that if I'm working multiple dogs, I can give them different commands and they're not going together.
What if you got 3 dogs out there though?
If I've got 3 dogs, I used to use their name. And they're not usually all out there together. So as they're coming along beside me, I'll say the one dog's name and then give it its command. And so when I say that dog's name, it'll look up at me and then it goes. So that's kind of the way that I'll use that. So, and yeah.
I think Milo touched on that. He called it name activation.
Yeah.
When he
to pulling them out of their pen or off the back of a vehicle, something like that. If you've got multiple dogs there and you need to call that certain dog down, once you've called him down by his name, then he's ready to go. And they're not all just jumping out of their skin at any different time, you know.
Yeah. And obviously we're familiar that you just moved, mate. What's your training setup, or have you got a training setup now? And did you mimic what you used to have, or what's that look like?
So I haven't really got a training setup as such. I had a bit of a round pen that was made up of some panels off my cutting arena, and that's where I used to do most of my training at my old place. And then I had just a little trial course set up down on the flat, which there was a little tiny flat of about an acre.
Yeah.
And then, but here, I've really only gone over with the pups there once, just because I've been a bit flat biscuit since I've been here. But I'm just going to use the sheep yards that they have there. They have some square pens there that I'll use to try and make my dogs take their sizes a lot squarer. And I'll just use that, and then obviously just some holding paddocks off that. You just all your training as such, it doesn't really matter you just make the best of your environment that you're in. You don't actually need something special to train a dog. It's just what you make of it, really, how you use that situation.
Actually, there was another question here from Danny Kerr. He goes, do you get disappointed when your good mates can't train a pup you gave them?
I know what one he's talking about.
Tell him pull his socks out.
I don't. I just get satisfaction when I see someone else actually able to train that dog.
That's an awesome answer.
It is.
Both listening.
But actually, like earlier, you were mentioning like about when you're looking at outside dogs and whatnot, and like genetics in close. Do you ever see dogs outside, then you go, oh shit, like I like the way that dog works? And how often would you go, and then once you find a bit more about it, you go, wait a minute, that's bred similar to what I like anyways?
Yeah, quite often. I went with Chris Bagnall up to Queensland twice. We went up there just looking at dogs. We went up to the Australian champs at Bohemia and Julaka just so that we could see what dogs that were up there. Pretty well both times we went up there, we liked certain dogs, but they all seem to be the same, bred the exact same way. So when we went up there, pretty well only dogs we liked were the cardoon dogs. As far as not that there wasn't other good dogs there, but for us to look for a dog to bring back home and do our job, they were the most consistent line of dogs and that sort of thing. And when I'm down here and I go to a trial and see a dog move a certain way and whatnot, generally you go and ask someone how it is and it's bred, similar to a dog that you know, or a line of dogs that you actually like. They're all bred the same way. So, yeah. And that's where it comes back to that consistency. And if you want that same thing, just keep breeding back into that line. You'll get that same consistency,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're touching on, sorry, you're right, Laura?
It's all right. You go.
We're touching on training there before. Do you how much time, ideally, how much time would you like to set aside for training? An hour a week or, a day a month, or if you had it your way, and time wasn't an issue.
Oh, geez, if I had it my way, I'd do it as often as I possibly could. But you got to keep in mind, some people go a bit overboard with the training. Say a dog's attention span, a horse, a human, everything is only 7 minutes. So, and then them animals need to be put aside for 2 hours to absorb whatever you want. So you could consistently train an animal. If you did every 2 hours, you get them broke as really quick. But yeah, having the time to do it like that is not going to sort of happen. But just to have consistency in what you're doing, never try and go further forward than where they're actually at. You've just got to be able to read the animal and that sort of deal to work out how much time it might need. Some might need more than others, and but the one thing I probably did learn over a period of time is starting certain dogs, and you think I'll put a bit more time into that dog and I'll catch it up to where this other dog is, because the other dog's a better pup and I need to put more work into that. You're better off sacrificing that one that's a lesser animal. Put your time into your better one, and you'll have a better product at the end of the day. So I have done that with some dogs where I have trained probably the lesser animal and it turned out the better one in the end, but only through me putting more time into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a question here from Rick Freeman. Do you use a long string at all in the early stages of training your working dogs?
I do at certain points. If I'm ever having trouble of it being disobedient, as such, and I can't catch the pup, and it, just letting them out for a run about, when I've got all my other dogs around, if it's just been a little bit ignorant, I can just go and put my foot on and pick it up and just bring that pup's attention back to me. That's about all I use it for. I don't as such let them go run around their stock, I suppose, with a long string on them. If I want to get that dog's attention, I just make myself, when I'm working the dog, say I'll step in between the dog and the stock, make myself appear bigger and a bit more intimidating, and till that dog actually takes the focus to you and off the stock, and then I'll just catch the pup that way. So I don't go chasing them around the yard too much or anything like that. So yeah.
What about when you're teaching them to drive, or even your Hunaways, when you want that pushy bark? Do you restrain with a long lead then? Yeah,
that's when a bit of that'll come in. Same as obviously on the normal working dogs as well. When you're wanting them to teach them to come in, they're going to have to be on a lead or a pole at some point there.
Particularly if someone wants to slide off to the head or is really heady.
Yeah, just to stop them rushing off. Or wanting to come out too far, you know. So, but yeah, some of that driving stuff, I've probably taught a few of these dogs. I've taught them on a lead, and then also taught them off lead. You know, where I'd get them to walk into a certain spot, and I always bring my dog round when I'm training them, bring them up beside my leg, and then let them walk straight forward with me, and I'll go with them, and I'll slow my pace and just keep walking at that straight sort of an angle. And then I might step in behind them, and they don't actually know that you've come in behind, and then you can give them their direction. And see, a lot of dogs will look to sometimes see where you are, because they might not want to come, you know, in front of you, but you've brought yourself into a different position and allowed that dog to go, so it makes you more comfortable getting in there to do that.
Yep. Sorry, I just paused for a sec there. Yeah, no, absolutely. I see. I do something very similar myself, and I see the benefits of that on the lead. I don't actually use the lead, but I think that would save a bit more confusion at times. Might have a crack at that myself. I did have a question I was thinking about before. Oh, now working sheep in the yards a bit more, and you're obviously using your collies in the yards. And before you mentioned like you don't like too much bark on like in normal work dogs like your collies. Will bark be something now that you encourage a little bit more of in your sheep yards?
Probably not. Not with them collies.
Yep. Use your hunterways to do processing.
Use them hunterways for that job. I still teach them collies to back sheep and everything like a lot of them new to back sheep and stuff before I actually came here. Like I used to go and do the odd yard dog trial, and I think some of them dogs that I take to some of them yard dog trials, like I go do carcaw, I think the time they seen sheep, the time before that was carcaw the year before.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, it's just a tool that you teach them. You never know when you might need it. You mightn't have them other dogs there, but if they can back up over them sheep and then teach them to tunnel back down through them, you know, you teach them dogs to bite sheep in a certain way, like maybe on the top knot or whatnot, you'll get just as many stock moved, as what you will by just getting, woofed at.
Yeah.
And
So,
you're all right. No, go for it.
Oh, just a question here from John. Start on from that. What age do you start your pups on cattle then?
Generally when they're ready for it.
What makes them ready for it then?
Well, whether they're being too rough on the sheep, you know, and they mightn't be taken to being chastised to keep off their stock. You might take them to some cattle. Like you got to make sure their teeth are set, obviously, and be aware of the situation you're going to put them in. You know, you're not going to go and whomp them straight out on some cows and calves, but introduce them some livestock that they're going to be confident on, just to see what they're going to have their because sometimes them dogs that are good and strong on sheep might be weak on cattle. So depends if that's what you're wanting them for. Just when them dogs are feeling confident, you think that you've got them in a position where you're going to be able to call them off as well. You don't want to just go and turn them loose when you got no handle on them at all, because that's when they're going to get hurt in that sort of situation. Generally, when introducing them to cattle, I'll work sheep and then put the sheep away and then turn them straight around and work the cattle, so that they're obviously working. They don't just go out there fresh as and want to tear in and get stomped down by a cow if they got that sort of way of working and want to get hold of a cow. Work some sheep, it's just another thing for them to turn around and do. So they could be anywhere from 8 to 10 months old, I'd say, when they get their first look at cows.
Yeah.
And with the change in scenery, is there anything you'd like to put it back into your line, something you'd like to change in your line or put into your line?
No, don't think so. I think I've been happy with that consistent line that I've got. I'll go along with that. Obviously, if I want something different, I'll just go and try and start a whole new line. I'm not gonna water down what I've got to change it to suit the situation, because hopefully it lasts for a long time, but you never know how long it's gonna last for, and there's no point changing everything to go and have to change it back. And it's sort of hard to get a consistent cow dog line, really, for what I've got, that then will turn around and they're actually probably better on sheep than what I thought they were going to be.
Yeah.
When I've got out here in the paddock, they seem to have a lot of feel on very runny sheep and whatnot. So, and they're a lot calmer in the way that they work the sheep, and it hasn't taken them too long at all to work out that, to break out and have a bit more distance and that sort of stuff without me having to chastise them to do it. And so it's, obviously it's a line that's working to does what sort of stock, So
you look a little relieved there when you say that. Like, so when you took this job on, were you looking at your dogs and the job and going, here's a challenge?
Yeah, I kind of knew I'd work sheep with them. I just didn't into how well I would be able to work. They're only going to be bad working sheep if they're out of control, and if something was going bad, stop the dog and reassess the situation. But it has been good to see how good they've actually become at doing this job.
And you'd have to be pretty proud of, like, obviously the effort you put into your own line and then see it adapt so quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like, it's great to be able to go and get a mob of, pretty weak sort of merinos in, and then turn around and get some crossies in that have got a bit more stand up, or they're kind of a bit like Houdini, some of these sheep, and want to take off and get through a hole, and the dogs have learnt to run and jump their net and fences and get out to block some stock. And then you go and turn around and bring some cows and calves in, and they'll turn around and box on with some cows and get in tighter in the way they work and want to get in and bite and where they haven't been actually biting the sheep. And it's good to be able to do all them tasks in the one day and know that same dog can handle it all.
Yeah, pretty rewarding.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you mentioned trialing a few times tonight. How long have you been trialing?
I think I did my first trial, I reckon 16 or 17 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
The first trial I ever went to was Timor cattle dog trial. And that was when I got that Nadu Sarge, and he kind of had every bell and whistle you could want on a dog. Like, you could run him round. You didn't even need stock there, and you could put on a flash demo with him. Like, you could run him around lefts and rights and back him up and walk him in and different stuff like that. And I got out there stuffing around, done a perfect run, but I only got to the second obstacle. And as I walked over, time ran out, obviously, and I'd hardly lost a point because this dog, you could move him around and rah. Pete Crow just said to me, he said, you don't get paid unless the cattle are in the yards at home and they go on the market, mate. So just get them home. Stop trying to look so fancy. That kind of changed a little bit of the way I was trialing, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. On that, there's actually a question here from Kerrod Wild. What's the best thing you've been shown or told, and who by?
Jeez.
Good question. Please don't say Benny.
No.
He just wouldn't give you satisfaction, even if it was.
That's not going to be it. Oh, Jesus. you've probably got me stumped. I would say Tony McCallum. I remember being at Inverell, catalogue trial there at Inverell, and that was one of the first times I'd met him. I talked to him on the phone, and he'd had people talk to him about me and that sort of thing. And I was out working my dogs, and you know, you go to a trial and you're like going left, right, stop, go here, do that, do this, do that. And he's like, what are you doing, mate? Like, he said, when you're at home working your dogs, do you sound like that? Do you act like that, you know, when you're working the dogs? He said, I bet you don't. I said, he goes, I bet you just send your dog out, let him pick the stock up, nice and calm, just talk to him like as if they're, you know, your old workmate, and you're going for a bit of a stroll somewhere, a bit of a walk. And that's how I started working them dog trials. And a lot of people used to think that I was a bit casual because I walk around with my hands in my pockets of my jacket and just walk along and hardly have to say too much at all. And them dogs would just go, you know, find the right position on the stock to keep them with you. And you just walk along and you get to the peg and they keep walking along, you know, and it just changed the way that I actually did a lot of that sort of stuff. So it just calmed me down, I reckon, when I was trialing.
So was a lot of that off the back of nerves, do you think, in the early days?
No, I think it was off wanting to probably look like I was pro doing it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of just going and getting the job done. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't worry. I get wound up at times when you're not going to plan it. That happened this year at Carco with Lola because she just would not pull up in one spot. I needed her just to pull up, and the more I got wound up, the more wound up she got, and you know, yeah. So, and that's probably one thing that you're saying. You know, like if you're nice and calm, the dog's going to be calm, your cattle are going to be calm. The more wound up you get, they feel that, and they get pretty wound up as well. So, yeah. So.
Absolutely, turns into this big ball of fire, just breathing, going nuts.
100%. Yeah.
Another question here from Denny Kerr, and it probably leads on from, you know, Elliston obviously donate cattle for the Classic and other events, but how do you go about getting cattle ready for a trial or even a draft?
A lot of that comes down to, I suppose, you break them down into smaller mobs. You know, you don't start off as a little mob, but just break them down, ride through them on a horse. And I just, say for Sydney show, we start off with 300 or 400 head to get the 120 to go there in the end. And I just let, say, half the mob out and just have a few dogs and just sit them about. You know, and I might just move them stock and I'll just ride through them on a horse, just see how they react. What's not good enough, I'll take them out. And, you know, then I'll get off on foot, just show them all different sorts of scenarios of what they're going to be seeing. And, you know, because obviously there's going to be people on foot in the yards. There's going to be people on horses, you know, say when you're doing a dog trial. Yeah, obviously you're going to have the dogs there. When I do break them in, like we ran dog trial there at Elliston, and I never broke them down in any lesser mobs than about 10s. But I just set some panels, you know, that might be a bit like the obstacles out in the paddock somewhere. And I just walk around. Once I got them cattle broke down to where they'd move off a dog and you didn't actually have to put too much pressure on them and they weren't trying to break away, take them across them obstacles, and you got to expose them to that sort of thing as well so that they actually learn that they can go through there and it's not going to be something that's daunting or balking to them as well, you know. So, yeah, just breaking down the boundaries.
And when you say you're cutting them out, you're cutting out ones that were maybe a little bit had a bit more fire in their bellies. Would you also cut out ones that were maybe a bit too quiet?
too quiet. No.
No.
Never really cut out anything too quiet, because you'll find that in a situation where, you know, they get singled out or anything, their temperament will escalate a bit, and they're not quiet in that sort of situation. So, you know, what animal can be prepared to go to Sydney show and have fireworks going off?
Yeah, 100%.
100 people trying to take photographs of them, and, you know, getting set out and do an arena, you know, in front of 10,000 people. It's a pretty daunting thing. So the quieter they can be, the better.
So when you're running around on the ground, you run around with sparkles?
Oh, no, I'm not. I get that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Just picturing you running around on your horse with sparkles breaking cattle in there, mate.
Mate, then I'd be struggling to stay on the horse. Yeah.
But so obviously, you've done a lot of cattle trialing, and we spoke about yard trialing. Have you done any other formats of trialing?
I've had to go at 3 sheeping.
Mm-hmm.
Had to go at, say, the USD. Where else? I went to Willertree. The first time I ever went to Willertree. 3 sheep. My first go was at Upper Horton, and I think the dog I didn't have much command on. I just sort of was walking, and just by chance the sheep went through the obstacle, but I did the whole course in about 5 minutes flat.
Yeah.
And when I finished, I didn't have many points left. The judge, because, you know, it's not a time trial, but I couldn't help that. But no, I went to Willertree. There's a fellow called Paul Young who I worked with at Gundabry. He was the one who showed me how to get my dogs backing and stuff in the yards as well. Taught me a bit of a method on how to do that. I went up there. I had 3 runs and got disqualified 3 times. So that was me for the 3 sheeping for a while.
Yeah.
Got a bit more handle, though, because sheep would stomp its foot at my dog, and my dog would just go buss and grab it. You know? And the judge would be like, "Thanks, mate." But I didn't sort of go too much there. And obviously we're doing all our different sorts of cattle trials that we're doing now. You know, we don't just do them 3-header cattle trials. We're going to do the ones that Tony McCallum was running, and we run a bit of a different sort of one there at the NCHA as well now.
And what is it about those trials that have you coming back?
Which one, mate?
The different ones there, like the different, like not just 3-headed cattle, like more cattle, obviously more on farm stuff as well.
Yeah, mate, it's more practical. It's more practical. You can use your dog how you would actually use it out on the farm, and position yourself in the way that you need to position yourself correctly. Like if you're working for me and you're standing in the middle of the gateway, which you do when you're at a normal trial, when you got to go and stand at a peg, you stand in the middle of the gateway just sitting there whistling at your dog to try and bring them over cattle through, I'll probably throw a rock at you. You know, because you're not in the right spot, you're not helping at all. Whereas, you can actually help be in the right position, and it helps, guide the stock and your dog. Obviously you can bring them in, do a bit of driving, and not be penalised for that sort of stuff as well. So it's probably encouraging a little bit of further education in the way people work their dogs now. You know, so we kind of we're at a bit of a stagnant spot, and we're starting to pick up that we need to catch up with the rest of the world.
Beautiful. Where are some of these trials, like some of these locations? Where can we get to or see some?
So there quite a lot of them. There's been some up in Manila, Tamworth, around Scone. They had one here at Cooler, and then and then obviously we run that one there at Tamworth at the NCHA deal. So we just, obviously anyone can put one on. We just pretty well, you just need a saddle and a place, and we can do it anywhere. You don't need anything special. we can use a tree for an obstacle.
Love it.
Yeah, so it's just everyday work stuff.
Yeah. And obviously you do trial and work your dogs every day, but we obviously, as we always ask, hear the comment, work dogs don't make trial dogs and vice versa. How do you feel about that?
Nah, that's look, your best work dog's your best trial dog as well. A good dog's a good dog, doesn't matter what the situation is. And obviously there's some dogs that are good at certain things. They might be a great cow calf dog that are strong, but they're not going to be a good trial dog. But they're probably generally not your best. They're not your best all-round dog for any situation anyhow, but your dog that is your best all-round dog for any situation, whether it be work or not, they're going to be your best trial dog anyhow as well. So I couldn't be two separate.
Yeah.
And what would you love to achieve on the trial front? What would you love to have on your mantelpiece?
I suppose it'd be great to win the Australian Championships. Obviously I was fortunate enough to win the New South one this year. It'd be great to win an Australian champs, especially even with a dog that you bred and trained yourself. Something like that. Yeah.
Beautiful. And being in the role that you were previously for so long, what advice would you give someone new that wanted to get into the livestock or ag industry?
Oh, look, there is that many jobs out there. It's not funny. Like, people struggling to get people to apply to go and work on farms. Like, as long as you are willing to have a go, be open-minded, most people will give you a start and just have a go. There's plenty of opportunity out there. Just got to put yourself out there at the end of the day. Like, work's not going to come and find you. You got to go and find work. And the best way to get a job's being a job. So just get out and start doing something. No one wants to employ someone who's been a dole bludger for 10 years.
Yeah. 100%. They're normally applying just to get their runs on the board, mate, so they can keep being a bludger. So some fantastic advice you gave there, mate. Get out there. And I like that bit you said. Well, was it like the best way to get a job is to be in a job?
Yeah.
Your reputation while having a go is what's going to give you those opportunities too, right?
Yeah, 100%. And people, word of mouth will get you into a better job if that's not what you're wanting to be doing. Just work hard at it and look, your reputation, people will talk about you, and so you'll get offered something at the end of the day.
Beautiful. And is there anyone you'd like to see us sit down and have a chat with on Dog Talk?
I've been thinking about this one actually. Probably two people, I reckon. One person would be, say, Clint Pickering.
I actually suggested him just the other day.
Yeah,
so
I think he's pretty honest and truthful. I don't know whether you'll get him on there or not, but other fella would be Brian Glendenning. So Brian's a drover up in Queensland, and he works multiple different types of dogs and styles of dogs, got lots of different situations. I think he don't mind a young, so I think you would probably be able to get him to have a chat. And I suppose it would be interesting to see what his different ways of starting a dog when he's out on the road, because he doesn't have any trainer sheep and he doesn't have any sort of a setup to do it. Like, how does he get them going?
And bludging as well. like you said, like there's no training facility out there, and how many times you put signs out on the road and cars aren't slowing down?
Oh,
Got a few headaches to deal with, right?
Yeah, 100%. You know, taking on different styles of stock. You know, like from you know, you could have some weaners to some black cows and calves to some Brahmins one time, and then like how do you go about breaking them down to actually teach them to walk certain distances in a certain, you know, day and things like that. Like there's a lot of interesting stuff there to learn from someone like that, I reckon.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And mate, was there a question that stood out for you tonight, and they will win a bag of Enduro high energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat?
Yeah, probably the one that had me stumped about someone that helped me.
Showed you something?
Yeah, showed me something about how to change what I do.
Yeah, well, that was Kieran Wild, so I'm sure he'll be pretty chuffed with that. He's been telling me this week how much he's loving the Enduro, so I'm sure he'll love another bag.
There you go. Laura, you got his details already?
Oh, I can get them, yep.
Get them? Fantastic. Maybe you want to shoot them through to us. There's a bag of Enduro coming your way. And also, Muzz, bag coming your way, mate, for being a guest on tonight. We appreciate your time and effort. And sitting in the cold with us as well. Oh, actually, you're I'm in front of the fireplace here.
Yeah, mate. I've got a gas fireplace now. Yeah.
One last question, as always. Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks?
Well, I'd probably pull the one duck on the size of the horse because I like a challenge. But I see the duck you put up the other day that was fighting the goat, so I'm sure about them little ducks now.
I love it.
Mate, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Laura's out there, not at home today. She's out working out west herself. So, Laura, thanks for having a chat, getting on, as you always, as the co-host, and getting on. And I know you've had a long day out there. So out of your normal office, so really appreciate that. Everybody that listened tonight and all the questions that come through, there's a flourish of them. Thank you, everyone listening back. And please remember, we learn every day, and the day we stop learning will be a sad one for all of us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.